So we have about 10 more minutes, and so I think that leaves about time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions. Thank you.
Okay. Puerto Rico budget is divided between the federal funding and the local taxes. Puerto Rico receives between $22 and $24 billion a year from our taxes. I say ours because now I live here in Maryland. I moved in from Puerto Rico. And I pay my taxes, which I am proud of, because thanks to our taxes, we have better quality of living. Some people deny to have a better quality of living and come here and beg for funding. I'd rather pay my taxes and see a better quality of living, having better school for my kids, and then you can work with the money. I don't have to be coming here to the States and beg for taxes for the people that work here. I want to pay my taxes in Puerto Rico and then expect that our legislature will know how to make a budget out of our taxes. And like I said, $24 billion from our taxes and $5 million on local taxes. That's the budget of Puerto Rico on a single year. Multinationals in Puerto Rico, they do 3 times around $80-something billion a year, and they don't pay a single federal money on federal taxes. Why? Because IRS section. And it's time that we make them pay the share. And IRS section was supposed to create jobs. Talking about jobs, look the amount of jobs they create. Almost none. So they're not doing the share. They're only making money, and they come here. I'm talking about the old 936 section IRS, pharmaceuticals mostly. And they pay for lobbyists, millions of dollars for lobbying to come here in Congress and stop any initiative that will create a self-determination process. So 936 section is related to our political status issue. Strongly related. People make their living out of our Puerto Rico issue. The voice of the Puerto Ricans is unheard. We don't have representation in Congress. We have a resident commissioner who have no voting power. So I will, as a citizen, I would love to have representative senators who will go and demand or request, you want to hear it, the same rights like every other representative from the rest of our nation they do, in order to have the fair share of the federal budget. So right now, our government comes here and requests, may I have tax exemption? May I have some more money because somebody mentioned sovereignty? Yes. If you're a doctor and you have a patient, and you know that the patient is going to die, well, you can't give him a pill. Give him a pill that it will die anyways. It may last a little bit longer. That's what's going on with the territory of Puerto Rico.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For those, if there's anyone that has not had a chance to speak, please take a minute or so to make a remark.
Just a question to the panel. I had the privilege of serving in the Clinton administration 10 years ago, and at that time we were talking about Puerto Rico being a gateway to Latin America. 10 years later, we understand that it could be a bridge to Latin America, and I was just wondering what were the panel's ideas towards making Puerto Rico more of a substantive bridge to Latin America in its export policy.
William Ramos from Commerce. Well, through the President's National Export Initiative, as I mentioned earlier, which is geared to creating over 2 million jobs, first time that the President puts a full force into an export initiative. We want to work in partnership with Puerto Rico to be one of our partners in exporting into Latin America. We're doing that. We're meeting with the Secretary of Commerce in Puerto Rico as well as the Secretary of State. And we're working with some of the island municipalities specifically, and we're working with Ponce on the issue of the Port of America. As the Port of America is one of the first post-Panama ports where the big ships will come on through Panama, and it'll be the first U.S. flagged port for them to come through. So we could do a lot of import-export through Puerto Rico on that issue.
think we have time for one more question.
Yeah.
We cannot continue having the economic models being presented along with political models that are not constitutionally viable for one thing, and they are not economically viable for another. We really have to understand that if we're going to start creating an economic model, it has to be a model that will allow Puerto Rico to begin developing a vision, an objective, either for any type of statement, but it has to be
Right.
Thank you.
We appreciate your point.
All right, last comment, please.
Good afternoon. Armando Valdez. I'm a former OMB director for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and I'm here representing Senator Eduardo Batia from the Senate of Puerto Rico. I would just warn against this straitjacket relating to status neutrality, because when we hear talk about status neutrality, what we're really hearing is proposals that would be viable under statehood. And in that sense, what we're doing is straitjacketing Puerto Rico's economic development. I would say that that straitjacket has specifically already damaged Puerto Rico's economy significantly throughout the years. If you look at the numbers that were cited here about industrial jobs, for example, 1995, Puerto Rico had about 160,000 manufacturing jobs. Currently, we have under 90,000. That's the first time since 1964 that Puerto Rico has had less than 100,000 manufacturing jobs. And that is directly related to the elimination of Section 936, which began in 1996 and ended in 2006, which coincidentally is the start of the current recession. Having said that, I would also posit that the elimination of Section 936 has affected bank deposits. There was a section in that disposition of the Internal Revenue Code that allowed those companies to retain their profits in Puerto Rico. Now banks have had to depend on brokered deposits, and that in great measure has had a lot to do with the current crisis in the banking sector. So I would warn against that status neutrality straitjacket that really says more about options that are viable under statehood. And I would argue for the creativity that the U.S. and Puerto Rico were able to display starting in 1952 and even earlier with the industrial exemption law that started in 1947 and later on with federal proposals that also exempted income from manufacturing operations in Puerto Rico. That sort of creativity is what allowed Puerto Rico to grow for decades, and it is that straitjacketing of Puerto Rico's economy tied specifically to status and status neutrality and really proposals that are viable under statehood. It is that which has really brought us to where we are right now. And that would be my warning and exhortation to the committee to really think creatively as we've done before to grow Puerto Rico's economy.
I want to thank you all for really a very interesting, lively, and substantive discussion. I think we've heard a lot of fantastic ideas for us to follow up and further develop. We've heard a lot about the intersection between status and the economic opportunities, and I think we're very sensitive to that. And we'll be very mindful as we continue our work. And so on behalf of the subcommittee of the task force, I want to thank you. I think that what happens next is that everybody else joins us here, but we have about 5 minutes for this transaction. Again, thank you very much, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting.